And this is better too, to have two different angles, so that
Perfect,
when
yeah.
you do, when it does get uploaded later, it looks different from oh shit, that's pretty good.
Okay, all right, here we go.
Okay, now, did you write some things down? No?
I thought of some things, so just can introduce ourselves. I'm Peter,
I'm Crow,
and when we get together, we have some pretty interesting conversations. So, thought we would do it in front of a camera this time.
come on, you, why won't you go?
Waiting for it to start. Is that touchscreen?
Oh shit, no it's not, fucking me. There we go. Okay,
All
there.
right, we're both rolling.
Yeah, we're both rolling. Okay,
Okay,
let's do
excellent.
our intro again. Sorry, people.
Okay, I'm Peter,
I'm Crow.
and when we get together, we have some interesting conversations. So, I'm going to try it in front of a camera this time and see what happens.
Yeah, see where we go. So usually what ends up happening here is Peter asks some really good questions, and for some odd reason, I'm just able to just answer them. There's no really explaining anything about it other than whatever answer I seem to come up with seems to be reasonable and logical. So most of what we talk about is spiritual stuff, so there's really no proving either way whether we're right or wrong. So it really all comes down to what you're comfortable with, I guess.
Yeah, I guess there's some pretty esoteric stuff we discuss, quite a variety as well. I guess I'll start by, I think one of the last things we talked about was how if you have the right dynamic, when you come up against somebody who's fairly, has a fairly rigid mindset, and you explain to them why you think, not exactly why you think they're wrong, but maybe even your perspective, it can really start to bring them around sometimes.
Well, yeah, because the only reason people are stubborn to begin with is because of the paradigm that they grew up in, whether it be Catholic, Pentecost, Lutheran, whatever, it doesn't matter. Our parents taught us what they believed, and and so we just run with it.
Yeah, so many people don't bother to second guess or analyze, I guess, what it is they believe. They believe whatever, and then they kind of just go with it. Some people have a diagnostic system, for instance, that will continually go over, here's what I'm thinking, but is this actually legit? I believe this, do I still believe it? Why do I believe it? Why do I no longer believe it? That sort of thing. Not to blow my own horn, but I'm one of those people who continually runs through some of these things, like I'll reanalyze my belief system day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute sometimes, and I'm always willing to change if there is a compelling reason, if it resonates with me. For instance, I've changed quite drastically and profoundly throughout my life, say from where I was 20 years ago. That person wouldn't recognize me today.
No, neither would same thing with me. I mean, I like to say that I came around the long way. I came through, raised in a Christian household, Pentecost. So there's a lot of jumping and babbling and talking in tongues, which growing up I found interesting, to say the least. But from there, I wandered into witchcraft and Satanism. Hell, I've even read the Satanic Bible, cover to cover, and it's an interesting book. the philosophy almost got me, because, you know, truthfully, it's a good philosophy. I mean, it talks about, you know, being responsible for yourself, but the thing is about about the philosophy was it was all service to self, and that didn't, you know, I guess it appealed to me for a little while, but then when I seen that there was no room for public service, or that it was actually frowned upon in the community, believe it or not, I just didn't really want anything to do with it, because it didn't make any sense to me. Because my attitude was, if we all act from a selfish position, then, you know, we'd just end up destroying ourselves and our environment, because everybody's looking out for themselves. So it's like, what was it? It's like when the people were fighting for the toilet paper. It's like, oh my God, how the hell that came about is just beyond me, other than somebody's fucking with the morphogenic fields.
Okay, I got this, some of the things we were talking about, and I was going to write a list. I thought, well, I can remember, but anyway, so I got one of the first things. I think I was talking with, I'm dealing with some atheists on Facebook and evangelicals on Facebook. I'm kind of a moderate theist, so I get flack from both evangelicals and hardline atheists. So I got the idea that, and I've always kind of thought, well, you know, I respond to these people in a neutral way, because there's enough negativity and escalation online without me contributing to it, certainly.
Yeah.
But then I went a little further with it, and I thought, well, let me see if, in addition to being neutral, or along with that, let me see if I can speak to these people as if I were, or as the Master, Jesus Christ, would speak to them. So kind of channel that whole vibe when I'm dealing with these folks, and it's interesting how that works out. Sometimes just a neutral thing that I say can be quite inflammatory to some of these people, and also a similar statement will. I've had people who were fairly forceful in what they were talking about, and I would just say something, you know, not even one way or the other, and sometimes they'd throw a like on it. So it's interesting how when you get in that mindset, you can defuse. And I remember where it was going. We were talking about kind of redeeming. One of the things I think is cool is in a story, a fiction story, when some character who's, you know, evil or whatever, later we find out the reason behind it. It was because of, you know, their upbringing or something that happened to them, where they never thought about why they held the position they did, and then something happens and they re-examine all that, and sometimes they become one of the biggest allies of the protagonist. That can happen, and it's awesome.
Well, again, it comes down to people's paradigms. Nobody wants to be told what to believe, is what it is.
Yes.
But I think we all need to get to the position to where we're all willing to listen to good ideas.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's where we need to be, because, I mean, if evolution is a thing, which I am totally convinced that it is, it's just not the way Darwin described it. I mean, I laugh at people when they're like, you know, they bring up the theory of evolution and they go straight to Darwin. It's like, Darwin was almost 200 years ago. It's like, haven't we evolved our thinking since then?
Yeah, the theory of evolution itself has evolved, hasn't it?
Yeah, but they still want to go back to Darwin's original work. It's like, Darwin himself said this is just the first chapter.
Yeah.
It's not a finished work, thus the reason why theory was attached to the end of it. So if everything around us is evolving, and we live in a dynamic world and in a dynamic universe, then shouldn't our spirituality be expected to evolve? I mean, are we supposed to be like our ancestors, be living in fear of a volcano forever? It's like, no, that doesn't.
Science.
Yeah, it's like that doesn't make any sense. And when you read the old texts, I mean, my biggest thing is that, it's, you see how the authors struggled. They struggled greatly to describe a complex subject with a limited vocabulary and with limited knowledge. Because you got to remember, our ancestors, they didn't have the technology we have. They were limited, their metaphors were mainly limited to nature and the society that they lived in.
Yes, we have not only much better metaphors now, we have science, and hopefully we have our psyche, our wisdom has evolved to deal with these things. And what I want to say, we understand how a volcano works, so we can move on to not being afraid of the volcano, but figuring out where we want to evolve our minds to next.
And plus we have a wider vocabulary, especially in the English language. I hear people, like, they put down the English language, like, people, it's like the English language is like the best language that this planet has ever seen. I mean, we've got close to 500,000 words. Something like just a little under 1 million. I can't remember the other one, but it's well over. Like, we got over 5 million phrases that we can use in the English language. Like, if you took the time out and you like really learn the English language, there is an amazing. It's amazingly dynamic. Once you grasp it, it's like we only use like 15,000 words in our average day to day, probably less, and we've got well over 200,000 words that we could utilize, and over 1 million phrases. That is more than any language has ever had or does have on this planet.
It's becoming incredible. Now it's growing too, isn't it?
It's constantly. We're adding new words to our language every year. Now, some of those words do come from other languages. And that's the other thing about English, is that other words from other languages seamlessly work its way into our language. Just anything. I mean, who would, Suzuki, Nissan, these words that come from other countries, they make it into our everyday language and we utilize them.
Yeah. So, okay, one of the other things I thought would be timely to discuss the whole situation with the COVID-19, the lockdowns, all the stuff that's going on with that. What's your take on it?
This whole thing is designed to basically wake the masses, and also it's giving people time for a reset, and that's coming. That's just, there's no choice. I mean, how we have operated this long using a 300-year-old economic system, I don't know how we've done it. I mean, it's patched together is what it is. Our system does not smoothly move from one industry to another. It's very, very cumbersome. And so that has to change, for number one. And by shutting down the whole world, that is actually going to allow this change to come.
Sure, yeah, I know I felt myself, the leading up to this, the mindset I've been in, the go and go and go and do, it's just been kind of so compressed and cramped, and we need, something's got to give, I guess, to use the old thing. So this has given us as individuals and as a society a chance to work on moving in a new direction.
Yes.
Moving forward.
And also, it's giving the chance for people that are going to do mad things, to do mad things. That's the other thing. This is revealing everybody's position, is what it is, and that's what we need right now. We need to know just how much evil is on this planet and how it operates. It's and it's scary and it's disgusting. But I mean, there's some things that have come out that I would never have guessed, like the Wayfair thing. I mean, who would have guessed that a $13,000 steel box was actually a kidnapped child that they were selling? I mean, the box has the same name as a child that went missing and is on the missing child list. And actually, it's not just one, it's several child if you did your research. It's quite disgusting. But this is the type of human trafficking that is going on this planet, and it's wrong. And then it's like, okay, you think to yourself, well, there's always been slavery. Okay, fine. Well, what about the children? I mean, children are going missing, children are kidnapped, children are murdered, not without even given a chance.
Yeah, no, we need to fix that.
And we need to fix that, and that's what this whole COVID thing is actually allowing us to do, because it has limited everybody's travel. And so the people have to get clever with how they're going to ship things, but now that everything is being scrutinized that comes across borders, except by the Trudeau government, but that's a different story, then it gets harder and harder for these traffickers to ship things back and forth across the border, because now everything's being inspected for potential COVID. And so, why not? I mean, nobody would have done that before. Not in a million years.
Yeah, no, it's
especially in the art
a lot
world.
of things to change our society in a fundamental way. And so you've led into another thing I wanted to mention, I guess, identity politics, for lack of a better thing. The big thing for me has been this, I guess, brought to light with these protests and riots and things, and it's so difficult to talk to some of these people. They've been called the radical left or whatever. I don't even use the term right or left, because I just call them radical, so there's some on each end. But what I've found is that unless one automatically jumps to whatever thing it is they want us to get upset and become an activist about, if we even ask, okay, why is this a thing, why should we, they just go crazy.
Yeah, that's how you know that these people are mad in the head, is because you can't have a conversation with them. It's like Antifa, Black Lives Matter. It's all the same. It's all the same people, and I mean, Peter's told me there. He said, human lives matter, or all lives matter, and they get upset with them. It's just like, I mean, maybe in the States, black people are having trouble, but that's not the case for every country. It's like in Canada, the red man has a far greater struggle in Canada than the black man.
Yeah, in Canada it would be Red Lives Matter, meaning
First Nations. Yeah.
And in fact, I had, as brief as I can, I had actually an argument, I guess, with a good First Nations friend of mine. I had put up something that said, we're all people, we're all in this together, and they kind of went crazy on it. And I actually asked them. I said, I treat everybody like a human being. I recognize physically that we are different races, different genders, different everything, but I treat everybody, quote, the same, or quote, decently or whatever, and that they still had a problem with that. And I guess as far as my reply in general to such people is, if you're not satisfied with me treating everybody like a human being, I'm not sure if you'll ever be satisfied with anything.
Yes, exactly. Yes, and these people are not satisfied. That just goes to show you the level of their insanity is what it is. Because it's it's let's sit down and have a conversation. Let's have a dialogue and let's figure this out. And it's not happening that way. They just sooner shoot first and ask questions later, and that is not, that's not the Christian way. It's not the way Jesus would have done things. I mean, more than once, Jesus went to the Pharisees and the Sadducees to give them a chance to see that what he's talking about is the truth, but they didn't want to because it was going to interfere with how they made a living.
Yeah, he gave them every chance.
Yeah, more chances.
More chances than they deserved, maybe more chances than anybody else would have.
Yeah, and
given them.
Yeah, and Black Lives Matter. I mean, they have had a chance for years to make changes in America, but they only rear their heads during the election cycle. It's like, well, what's the work you're doing in between time? Well, they're not doing any work. It's just, so it's very confusing to me. Like, if this is very important and this is like true altruistic work, then it doesn't matter what season it is. You're still going to be doing this work.
Right. And more in general, I understand that these folks are frustrated and so on, but I know for me, a watershed moment or a big tipping point happened, the events leading up to the 2016 U.S. election. There was, I looked at all the arguments on both sides, the right and the left, the supporters of Trump, the supporters of Hillary, etc. And I decided, unless I performed my own thorough investigation into anything these people said, I couldn't take either side at face value. So that was when I decided, okay, I'm going to work on focusing on the higher planes of existence. I'm going to focus inward, figure out what's, how to grow myself as a being, etc., etc. So I'd been doing that sort of for many years before that, but 2016 was it for me. I'm like, okay, I'm going to focus on as much spiritual growth and personal growth as I can, and the rest of this stuff I'm not going to worry about so much.
And that's pretty much where we have to be. I mean, I worry about the planet, I worry about the people, but in the end, all you can do is try to guide them spiritually into the light.
Right, and I remember where I was going with this. We were talking about the Black Lives Matter, Red Lives Matter extremists, and it's not, if it's not whether they have to decide. We've established that no matter how much of whatever it is they want they get, they'll never be satisfied. So they have to decide whether they're going to be materialist or spiritualist. I think that choice is being given to them, or perhaps even thrust upon them, and they have to figure out what they're going to do about it.
You hit the nail right on the head. It does come down to, are you a spiritualist or are you a materialist? And you are right. This decision has been thrusted on them, and this is their reaction to it. I don't think that they are really cognizant of what's really going on.
I think people are not. Yes.
No, I think this is all just reactionary behavior, is all this is. And so they're reacting to what is going on.
They haven't had a lot of chance or opportunity, or they've never had many philosophical, really introspection, or they haven't been philosophically minded, spiritually minded so much in their lives before, and then they have this thing happen and they react as if as they usually have, and it's not having the effect it used to. So
Yeah. Not like it used to. I mean, I remember riots. There's always been riots, and I actually was talking to a buddy of mine who probably has been awoke for longer than anyone else I have ever known. And I asked him, like, he's in his 60s, and he's been awoke since since he was 30, so a while now. And I asked him, I was like, have you ever seen anything like this in your whole life? And he's just like, no, this is just boggling his mind completely. And and the best part is about it is that this guy, even though he was like been awoke to what's been going on in society, he was never one to believe in spiritual things. And now I've talked to him quite a bit, and I show him things. He still thinks I'm that I'm crazy, which, nothing new. But he sees where I'm coming from, and he's beginning to see that when I can point to stuff in history, he's beginning to see that these dots are connecting even today. And so he's starting to get more woke. Like woken spiritually now.
Excellent.
Like material wise, he was wide awake, but now he's starting to wake up spiritually, which is quite the thing to watch.
Yeah. Excellent. I remember I was listening to Ram Dass, the Be Here Now talks, and he mentioned an incident where they were at, he and a group of people who were with him were at the Rocky Flats. I think it was I don't know if it was a nuclear reactor or a nuclear disposal site or something. Anyway, there were people protesting, I think both pro and against nuclear, either nuclear energy, nuclear weapons, something like that. And he and his group sat in the middle of it all, and they just meditated, I guess, in a circle, and they had prepared a statement, and they said, "We are meditating here today because we see that is the best course of action to take. The actions we see around us do not seem to be worthwhile."
Unproductive.
Unproductive, correct.
Yeah.
So that's my position is, yeah, so if you, again, the non-spiritual see me doing, quote, nothing, but I'm for 20 years I've been working on positive thinking, learning about the law of attraction, stuff like that. If I do say so myself, I'm working in the spiritual level quite a bit, I would say. And as far as other than that, I'm a farmer. I grow food, feeding probably thousands of people. I have my Think Positive for Life motivational program. So explain to me again how I'm some kind of terrorist who's not doing anything.
Exactly. No, that's actually, if I truly believe that if it wasn't for Trump, I think that these radicals would have went after the farmers. I think they would have, like, truly, and it would have been a war between those that produce and those that do not.
Right.
I mean, it's already. I mean, there is.
That's what it looks like to me.
That's
attempting to,
They're attempting at it right now, and it is actually right now. It is a war between those that produce and those that do not, but it's not at the level that I would have expected. Certainly not at the level that John Tater predicted.
Right.
I mean, John Tater predicted that by 2016, rural America would be fighting with urban America, and we kind of see that happening now, but not nearly at the scale that he described.
Yeah, instead of Armageddon, it's more of an argument between those who are aware and those who are not.
Yeah, and I truly think that the only reason that it hasn't gotten to that level is because of Trump, because he gave the farmers enough money that they could bounce through all this shit, and and they're not struggling, and they're not nearly as stressed as what they were 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
They've got some help. I mean, nothing's going to get a person to pick up a gun faster than if the person is already stressed.
Yes.
So Trump relieved that stress from the farmers, and I think that's why we're not seeing a huge stand up. What farmers are doing, and I'm sure you are well aware of this, is that they are taking steps to protect themselves. They're not going to look for trouble, but my God, if trouble comes to them, they're ready for it.
That's right.
Yeah, and that's the way we all should be. I mean, I personally, I think everybody should have a gun. I really do. I mean, this taking people's guns and relying on government, that doesn't work. We're already seeing that doesn't work.
Yeah, the broader corollary to that I see is the big government folks. It's certain safety nets and things, it's fine, should be in place. I believe in a sort of a socio-capitalist economy where there's
yes, so do
yeah,
I.
it's one, pure socialism or pure capitalism. Neither of those are any good to me. But as far as I'm going to go on the spiritual thing again, and what I was talking about before, you can have all these social programs and
I think it should be a 20-80 split. 80% capitalism, 20% socialism.
Something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, some kind of balance or some kind of thing that would work properly, because and so much of it comes down to human nature. That's what I was going to say, that you can have all the things that the left is calling for, and there's this other dimension to it that the materialists don't get. They don't seem to understand. They keep wanting stuff and things and whatever. They see these issues or these supposed issues, or the issues are there. Sometimes they're reported. That they're inflated. Sometimes they're not as bad as they actually are. Obviously, some of this stuff is more than you want. A good number is 0, but I'm certain that the more spiritualist one becomes, the less materialism they need. They don't. They can take care of themselves more.
If materialism was such a great idea, then why the fuck do people keep needing more stuff?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's not filling them up. We must have learned that by now in the last 50 to 75 years. But spiritually, people get filled up. Now, I don't have any problem with materialism. I mean, fuck, I love shit. I love having stuff. I love my computers. I love having nice stuff in my house. I like having a nice vehicle. Capitalism did all that for me. So, but the problem that I have is crony capitalism. I don't like that. I think that if we had a fair, balanced capitalist system, we would already have flying cars.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, easily. But what ends up happening in this crony capitalist society is you have those that are already on top pushing those at the bottom further down. And just look at the Tuckermobile.
Right.
Tucker. I mean, he built a better car. I mean, it was an awesome car. And if we were operating in a true capitalist society, Tucker would have had one of the biggest manufacturing for cars in the United States by the mid 1960s, we'll say. But instead, his competition, being Chrysler and GM, decided that they liked things the way that it was, and it was easier to destroy his dream than it was to improve their product. That's the problem that I have. I mean, it took Japanese imports to improve the American-made automobile.
Right, so we have the status quo, which is suppressing everything else, and then we have the other thing I have a problem with in capitalism is I would like to see target profits of, I don't know, let's say around 20%, which is usually enough to grow a business and to make a decent amount of money, and the rest of it, I don't know, should go into a general social fund or something. You know,
I've given that a lot of thought, believe it or not.
yeah. So what do you think about it?
Uh,
Maybe on
I
essentials,
only
non-essentials
see-
can charge what they want. I don't know. Let's hear it.
I can't find a way for that system to work.
Yeah, no, you have to have decent human. You know,
Yeah,
human nature destroys it.
unfortunately, you need decent human beings. But every time I think of a system, I mean, I try to think of like every horrible thing that a person could do to abuse it. And the thing is that you know, knowing what I know about charities and shit like that, what I know is that people would abuse a system like that.
Yeah, there'd have to be some kind of enforcement. It would have to be almost, voluntarily. The people would have to be overwhelming majority would have to become aware by that time for such a system to actually be functional. Because you can't legislate any of this stuff.
No.
There's certain things you can legislate, like,
The
Whatever.
the only way a system like that would work is if okay, say you got a multi-million-dollar corporation, okay, and the corporation averages $50 million a year in profit, okay. Now that profit obviously is going to be taxed, of course, and as it should be. And and let's say you had a system where, okay, 50 million is too much money for profit. So we want you to put that into charity work. The only way I can see a system like that working is if come around the other way, is if the company that is putting money into that type of a system is able to have somebody on that board
right.
to administer the funds. And I don't see any other way how that could be fair, because if I own a company and I'm putting $10 million into this charity because the government says I've made too much money, then I want to be able to put somebody that works for me on the board of that charity,
Right.
so that I know that that money is being allocated for things that I want to see it go to. Like, my thing would be schools and libraries. Okay?
Sure.
And so, and then there might be somebody else on the board that, their thing might be hospitals. It's like, okay, we need to reach a compromise. Okay? So, I want, we'll take and we'll put, 10% into schools and education. You can put 10% in your hospitals. You can put 10% in your school. We'd all have to come together and agree on where all this money is going.
Right.
And I would see that this, and that would be the only way a system like that could work. But it's also open for abuse as well.
Absolutely.
Because, you could have a company that, say I'm not a very nice person and I might put my man on that board. And I want him to only direct money towards charities that I own a piece of. Or like say, I want money allocated to a certain organization that I'm leasing the land to those fuckers.
Right.
Yeah, so there's
So
conflict of interest.
That's why in the training for law of attraction, let's say Kevin Trudeau's program, Your Wish is Your Command, How to Manifest Your Desires, he explains what the law of attraction is, how it works, how to use it, but he keeps saying over and over again that the first thing you want is to be happy.
Yes.
And then things will fall into place. So yes, you can have all these things like, say, I want generally profits of 20%, corporation targets across the board, but things like that. But I want to see things that make me happy. I want things that seem worthwhile to be occurring more and more and more and more and more all the time. And I focus on that and I focus on that, and I'm seeing it. One of the things that can be extremely helpful is, I'd say that your income, I think, is the average of your 5 best friends. Well, okay, fine, but how about this? Your happiness could be the average of your 5 best friends.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to choose who you hang around with. A little more discernment with who your friends are.
And I like to tell people, it's like your spiritual currency is just as important as your bank account.
Absolutely, more so.
More
Well,
so.
yeah.
And
at least equally important.
and there's too many people walking around on this planet with, they're bankrupt spiritually. They have no spiritual currency. And and what is spiritual currency? It's basically your ability to understand spiritual things, and in a logical and straightforward way. I'm not talking about beliefs. Anybody can, you can be told what to believe, and that means nothing. It's like, spiritual currency is the stuff that you go looking for, the stuff that you find just laying around, the little bits of wisdom that you pick up when you're sitting with the elders of a tribe. I mean, you don't have to believe everything that they tell you, but there's always good nuggets of truth that you can walk away with. That increases your spiritual currency because it's making you a better person.
Yeah, I say listen to everybody, but form your own conclusions.
Yeah, and I've listened to everybody. I mean, I've traveled far and wide, and I've sat with Satanists. I've sat with indigenous leaders. I've sat with Christians. I've sat with Buddhas. I've sat with Hindus. I've sat with the Sikhs. I've sat with Catholics. I've sat with them all, and there's always something that I can learn from them. But the biggest thing is that what you keep an eye out for is, well, for one thing, things that just don't make sense. But the other thing that you look for is, how does this serve God, and how does it serve others? Because
Right.
all the things of God are all about serving others. There's nothing selfish about God. And so if there's nothing selfish about God, then there should be nothing selfish about your philosophy.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and this is how I keep things. I mean, personally, I like to keep things simple. Keep it simple as simple. Don't overcomplicate anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Peter and I have had this talk, and most of the time when I'm listening to people and what they're talking about, I listen for certain things. Especially I'm listening for service to self. If I hear nothing but service to self in a person's philosophy, I really don't want a whole lot to do with their philosophy, because it's just not the way the Son of Man taught us. Didn't teach us any of that. So why should I be bothered with it? It's, yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that. The actual religion that it's not even a religion. It's a lifestyle almost. If you get down to it, what was it that he actually asked us to do?
In the end, everything that he had to say and everything that he taught all boiled down to service to your Heavenly Father and service to your brothers and sisters.
Yes.
That's really, everything else is an extension of that. It was just a way to reinforce those lessons. And yeah, and and that's really what it came down to.
Yeah, that's the basis from what, you can do just about anything as long as you make that the basis of it. You're working on serving the Father, serving the universe, serving your fellows, serving yourself through serving others, I guess. It's kind of a strange thing because, and I'm going to run this past you, and you can correct me, but I've said in my program that basically don't spread yourself too thin. You want to make sure that your energy is up so that you can help others, and that is kind of selfish, except it's not.
No, because even Jesus insisted that the apostles take 1 day off a week to rest and play.
Yes.
Yeah, they insisted on it. Usually it was a Wednesday. The Son of Man actually didn't pay much attention to the Sabbath, other than it was the culture that he grew up in. But technically, he really didn't have much use for it. Because as far as he was concerned, it had lost all of its meaning. And so his thing was, and plus he wanted his apostles to have a day to where they could go play. Now, back in those days, the Sabbath was adhered to quite strictly. And so there was always you could end up in chains for not following the Sabbath properly. And so that's why the Son of Man chose a Wednesday for his apostles to go play, so that way they could travel back home and see their family without violating the Sabbath law. So that was his workaround.
Yep.
He didn't tell them that they were wrong. He just found a better way. And so, that's how you do things. If if a roadblock is put up in front of you, this is where I have a problem with these protesters. If a roadblock is put up in front of you, find a way to work around it. Like, the civil rights issues in the United States could have been solved a long time ago. And, the laws are there. All they had to do was just use them. And, but people's own greed got in the way, and service to self. If black people really, I know I'm going to get kicked in the ass for this, but if black people really, really wanted to help themselves, one of the first things they should have done was stop selling drugs in their own neighborhood. Holy shit. They could have been doing stuff in their neighborhood. They could have been, taking government to court. It's like, instead of hiring a $100,000 lawyer, then, learn law yourself and take these fuckers to court over and over and over again. Believe it or not, you don't have to go to university to become a lawyer. You just need to pass the bar exam. Yeah, and guess what? You can do that reading the books at home.
Yes.
My father, who had trade tickets in plumbing and electrical, okay? He did not once step foot into college to get those tickets. He challenged the exam himself and then went and worked in the trade and got his hours. He didn't go to college. Of course, mind you, this was back in the 60s, but still, he didn't go to college. He challenged the exam. I got my, when I went to challenge for my gas fitter exam, When I wanted to upgrade it from domestic to what is called a general gas fitter's license, which basically gives me allows me to work on any piece of gas-fired equipment, I didn't go back to community college to do that. I ordered the books from CSA. They showed up, cost me like $150 for these books. They showed up, it was half a dozen modules. I read them, did all the quizzes at the end, and then went and challenged the exam. Passed it. And since I already had a job working as a gas fitter, all I had to do was put in the 1,000 hours with my employer, and I had my general gas fitter's license, which allowed me to go to the mines and work.
And then today, probably you could do it on the internet for less money.
Yeah, exactly. I could have downloaded the books.
Yep.
And did it that way. But actually, CSA, actually, it's the same price as if you buy them.
Is it?
Or you download. It's the exact same price. It made no difference, the fuckers. And I was just like, oh, it just blew my mind. It's like, it's an electronic PDF. Yeah. What the fuck?
Let's see. Next time I'll have a list of stuff, but I think we can maybe start to wrap it up. Probably for this video, you think?
Maybe.
Let's see, because I'm kind of out of. Let's see, what have we got here for? Go back here on this. I guess we could talk a bit about the Urantia book and what's going on. So.
I love talking about the Urantia book. Fuck do I ever.
So it's the basis of it is that the person known as Jesus Christ who came to earth 2,000 years ago was actually somebody called Michael of Nebadon, who was the sovereign of this local universe, which is basically this galaxy, I think. And what he was doing was a series of bestowals, and I like to describe it like the CEO of a company getting training in, or he's the son of the CEO and he's next in line for the job or something, and he's getting training in being a vice president, being a junior vice president, stockroom manager, stockroom clerk, sweeping the floor, maintaining the building, everything necessary so that when he takes that job, he actually knows what goes on and what has to happen so that he actually knows the company inside and out.
Oh,
so
yeah.
He's going to be a better manager rather than if he's just hired or if he's just promoted or whatever it is.
Yeah, Michael went through all of that. I mean, the first couple of million years of his existence was spent in Havana, doing the circuits of the billion planets in Havana, and learning. And I shouldn't say millions. There's probably billions of years because I mean the father goes back countless trillions, so it's old, and so he spent his time. He and the thing is, Okay, doing the circuit in Havana, got Michael familiar with all of the Father's creation, because the billion planets in Havana, that is where the original templates for all of God's creatures exists in perfection. Like there are human beings in Havana that were created as Havana beings, and they are perfect. And Michael did the circuit, and he and at the end of it, when it was time for him to go and start his own universe adventure, he chose humans. He chose humans to be the primary life form in his universe. There are other life forms that he chose. But human is the primary. And that is so that's why when you see pictures of aliens, they're all like, or people describe them, they're all very
So
human-like.
some kind of humanoid.
Humanoid, very
thing.
human-like, and so it's that's why. In other universes, completely different deal. But I mean, you got to remember, he had 1 billion planet templates to choose from, and then it gets even more freaky, buddy. Holy shit! I couldn't even. Okay, this is a vision. Okay, so can't prove this either way. But I was just like, that's fucking amazing. But it also explains why creation is so holy to the creator sons. Okay. So Michael, when he makes his universe, he's just basically when he made the universe, he just basically made a area for things to take place. Okay, and then of course the Eternal Father will materialize things in Michael's universe, but it's up to Michael to send his people to make it all come together. It's like basically like having a load of lumber dumped in your front yard.
Yeah, you get the components, and then you order it from the company, and then you or your crew assemble it the way that you want it to.
The way you want it to be, yes. Mm-hmm. So nothing like so. It's like God just basically provides the material. Okay. It was up to Michael to build. Now, I had a question, and my question was, where does this material come from? And of course, every time I ask a question, the Father always answers me. But only if you ask the question right. The Father will never answer your selfish questions, ever. Guaranteed, it will never happen unless that selfish question is like concern, like oh dear God, what's going to happen now, right? Stuff like that. But if your question is mainly selfish, don't expect an answer. I'm sorry. But general inquiry questions, they get answered right away. At least they do for me. So I asked the question, well, where does this material come from? Well, shit me drawers. Apparently, this material comes when Hovana beings give themselves up to paradise.
Okay.
Now, it takes about a billion paradise beings to build one galaxy. And so what it is that they give up their essence to the Father, and this is all voluntarily, by the way, and it was shown to me as a box. Just a small box, basically concentrated Hovana energy from these Hovana beings. Now, the thing is that Hovana beings never die, okay? They are giving themselves up to the Father. But when they give themselves up to the Father, another Hovana being is born somewhere in Hovana on one of the billion planets. I mean, it's a roll of the dice which one. But one is born. And they're born in the regular way. But it's a surprise. Here you go. And of course, when these children are born on Hovana planets, it's a special event because they know that because they know that the cycle is continuing, and and they also know that all these beings gave up their essence to build galaxies in the realm of time and space. And it's just basically it's sanguines all the way around. It's like it's beautiful. I mean, me describing it in our language doesn't even give it justice. It is just the most beautiful thing that you can imagine when you see why their reasons for wanting to do this. It's all because they just have this burning desire to serve the Father, and his universe of time and space. And so they just do it. And they have no regrets doing it. And it just, and you know, and you got to also remember that these beings that do give up their essence for this time-space project, they've already been alive for 1 billion years. You know, they have no regrets. And they just decide that this is how they are going to serve. There's always a way to serve in God's universe. Always. That's the beauty of it. There's no shortage of ways to serve. And yeah, and then this material shows up. It's like our universe is made, our little galaxy, it's made from 1 billion Havana. I can't use the word soul because souls don't apply to these beings.
It's what happens when they transition.
It's a transition.
Material involved in that, yeah, it's
Yeah.
almost beyond our words that we have
Yeah,
to
it's-
describe what it is, but that's what happens then.
Yeah, that's what happens, and then it just grows out, and this is how the universe grows and grows and grows. And this is going to keep continuing right until all the universes come into light and life, which will probably be another 1 trillion years from now, but God is in no hurry for this. I mean, it's got to be perfect. And then, you know, and then once that is done, once this time and space universe goes into light and life, that will create another insulating barrier between God and sin. Because once all the universes come into light and life, there is no more sin. And so right now, our universes of time and space are full of sin. Havana is the buffer between time and space and paradise. It's that buffer so that sin doesn't come through, because we talked about this before. If sin were ever to make it to paradise, the universe would cease to exist immediately. Done. Just like that. God does not cease to exist. Don't think that for half a second. God doesn't cease to exist. God will always be there, but basically he's got to start all the fuck over again. And we're already 63 trillion years in. That's a long fucking time. That's a lot of zeros, people. That's a lot of zeros. And
So that's, yeah. So
yeah, so that's so once these universes of time and space come in, and I mean, when you look at how much leeway we have with creation in this universe of time and space, you add another layer of insulation to protect the Father, the Eternal Father. Now we're going out into another universe, which is going to be even bigger.
yeah, so that it talks about how many are there? There's 3 outer space levels beyond. This isn't even the first
No, this
outer
isn't
space.
even.
This is part of the core still.
Yes.
The 7 super universes, and the thing he's talking about, Havana at the center.
Yeah.
8 of these things is the core of this creation. So there's planned 3 more outer space levels with buffers between them. So when we get these 7 into light and life, what then the construction will take place. It'll start before that, I suppose. But
we're told that it's already started, but already hints of it starting. And and here's the best part, okay? The new universe, outer space universe, we haven't even got a description for it yet. That is like fucking video game level reality, is what that will be.
yeah, it's the next level beyond.
Yeah, and there will be more.
They'll be starting with what we've got now, or what we'll have. They'll be starting with what we'll have when we're in light and life. I don't know, but
They'll be starting off differently because the Finilators are going to be involved in that project. And so right now, okay, we've got the 7 universes, but let's just stick with ours, all right? Our grand universe is the universe of the Father, Son, and Spirit.
right.
Okay? Then in the next iteration of universes, we're going to go down through all the other iterations of the universes in that outer time and space, except we're going to have a universe that is going to be Father, Son, Spirit, Finnilator. And the Finnilators are going to work with the Creator Sons. And that will be a project between the ascended mortal beings and the Havana beings. We will be working with them like hand in glove. It's not going to be like what it is in this universe, where we don't even know if they're even watching us half the time. But in the other universe, it'll be like people are just going to know. But this outer universe is also going to have a lot more leeway for sin and evil. So it gives God a chance to experiment with sin and evil in a safe fashion.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's like working in a lab.
Yeah.
It's just
that was the impression I got. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, basically
He's got his hazmat suit on now.
Exactly.
He
The
can
hazmat suit's on.
Experiment with the extreme stuff if he wants.
Yes. Now we can do the experiments now under safe conditions.
Okay.
And safe and controlled. And because the Finnilators are going to be involved, Finnilators are just our God, essentially. That's what Finnilators are. They're essentially everything that God is, except it's an ascended mortal being.
Yeah.
What are Finnilators? Finnilators are a human soul coupled with a piece of the Eternal Father as one. Once that comes together as one, you're essentially your God.
They're pieces of the Eternal Father in discrete forms.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I mean, a grain of a fleck of the Eternal Father is like having the whole of the Eternal Father.
The fragment is no less powerful than the original.
Exactly. And how many times have we read that in ancient scriptures? I mean, I'm sure you've seen it too. It's like, a fragment of God is no different than the whole.
Yeah.
It contains the whole.
And I just started listening to paper 180 or 181 when, just after the Last Supper, when Christ is saying that he must give himself up so that he can come to each being, and basically he's going to be able to be with each being as he was with the disciples in a complete form, with every being in the world that invites him to be.
Yeah, because it was necessary to go to the cross to put a memory in the morphogenic field of this planet that there would be no way to confuse it with any other memory. And there's oh man, because I asked a question once, was the cross necessary? And I was showing the conversation. You'll love this. I was showing the conversation between God the Father and Michael, our Creator Father, before he went on his last dispensation, which ended up being here on Earth. Yes, it was about 100-year conversation. Okay, yeah, they don't talk very fast, and so Michael had this 100-year conversation with his father, and at this time the Luciferian rebellion was already in full swing, and the system of Saturnalia was in extreme danger, and Michael went to his father for advice, and he asked a question. He's like, how am I going to save them? So, this was the part of the conversation that I was privy to, not the whole conversation, but this was the part that I was privy to, and it blew my mind. In fact, it blew Michael's mind too. Like Michael's, Michael's jaw dropped to the floor. What God told him when he asked, "What can I do to save them?" the Father told him, "Let them hurt you." Now that is a profound statement to a being like Michael, who nothing hurts him. I mean, he's the creator of his own universe. He can do whatever the fuck he wants. He's the master of his universe. And then to have his Father say, if you want to save them, let them hurt you. And as a faithful son, that is exactly what he did. He let us hurt him. And it saved us. It is saving us. It will save us. I mean, that is just, Michael didn't expect them to go to the extreme that they did. Like, he knew that he was probably going to get a shit kicking and possibly die. But he didn't expect them to do what they did. Because Michael doesn't know the future any more than the rest of us. He can calculate the future just like we can when given enough data. And since he's the master of the universe, he's got access to all the data. So that means that he can make a really accurate prediction of the future, So that, he's seen it as one of the possibilities, but that possibility didn't solidify until the weeks leading up to the crucifixion. I think it was the last week before the crucifixion that he realized that, holy shit, this is going to fucking hurt.
They're going to go as far as they possibly can.
Yes, and I think he realized that about 2 weeks before the crucifixion, after, speaking with them, and then also seeing what was going on with Judas and the conversations that he was having. Because you got to remember, while Michael was on Earth, the what do you call it? The semi-material beings?
The Midways?
The Midways. Yeah, the Midwayers, they were they all came to the Leviat region. That, when Michael was born. I mean, they knew, they were heading, and you got to remember, these guys, these semi-material beings, Midwayers, they're 18 to 24 inches high. They're not very big, because you got to remember, when they were born fully grown. So they're the size of a fucking baby. That's all they are. And so, they all had to, and they move across the planet. They have to walk. They don't fly. They don't, now they might be able to drive. But they, at that time, their only means to get from place to place was either jumping on a wagon in a caravan, or they walked the whole damn distance. And they were spread out all over the world, and they all came. And so the Son of Man could see them and have conversations with them. And they would go, and they would be following. Remember, there was 50,000 of them, and 25,000 of them stayed loyal. So that's 25,000 Midways. And they were keeping an eye on the apostles. They were keeping an eye on the Pharisees. They were listening to all these conversations. And they would come to Jesus, and they would just be like, by the way, you're full of Judas. He's fucked in the head. I gotta tell you this. And, Jesus was just like, yeah, okay, thanks. It was just information that they brought to him. And so he was forever talking to them, and they were forever back and forth. And chit-chatting with them and telling them all, because you think for a second, this is their creator, the Father that landed on this planet. Think about that. You're a Midwayer, and your creator just landed on the planet, and you fucking know it. Where are you going to be?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guarantee you, I know where I am going to be. I'm going to be wherever the fuck he is. And you know, there would be nothing that's going to keep me from doing that. I mean, even if I was in Asia Minor, I would be traveling all the way to the Leviat just to see this whole shit show fucking play out. And yeah, so it was a good time for them too, and they learned a lot too. They learned a lot about their Creator Father that they normally would never have gotten to know. I mean, who the fuck do you think? I mean, he talked to when he was 40 years in the wilderness. He's probably spent a lot of time ministering to the midwayers. Because you remember, a lot of the midwayers rebelled too, right? And so Jesus wanted to give them a chance to come back into the fold as well.
Sure.
So there was a lot of time when he was ministering to these guys as well. We just don't really get to see that story because it would only confuse most people.
Yeah, as I said, the book is 2,000 pages, and the thing that blows my mind is it's basically an outline.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's 2,000 pages and it's an outline.
It's the minimum we need to know.
Yeah, it's 2,000 pages and it's an outline. And when I first read the book, I was looking for things that were not true. I was looking for things to not make sense. Like, I was like, no fucking way. When I first came across this book, I was like, no fucking way. This has got to be bullshit. And of course, I started reading it, and I read the first book, and it's all about God the Father and how the universe works and everything. And I was like, yeah, okay, interesting. Kind of logically makes sense. But there was no way for me to either prove or disprove that because it's all outside the realm of our daily reality. It wasn't until it got to the part about the evolution of the Earth. That's when I started paying attention. And that's when I really started scrutinizing it because I know the history of the Earth. I mean, I love archaeology, and I've studied, I've read books and books on archaeology. And and geology. And because you really can't get into archaeology without getting into geology. It just kind of sanguines in. So I already knew quite a bit of the science involved in the evolution of this planet. And there were things that I read in that book. The first thing that got my attention was the detail in which the book got into on continental drift. And so, coming from this end of history, I was just like, continental drift, right? We all know that, right? But then I was like, wait a second.
It was a theory until like 1965.
Exactly. This was written in 1934.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just like, wait a second. Continental drift wasn't floating around at that time. Not even, it might have been an idea. It was an idea being floated by one scientist. And that's a big maybe, because he actually didn't publish a paper until 1952. So that's a big maybe of whether or not he was even floating around in 1934. So I was like, oh, well, that's something. And it described continental drift perfectly, exactly the way we understand it today. And I was like, okay, interesting. Check mark for the book. And then the part that really convinced me that the book was truth is when they talked about the sun. And the sun being mostly calcium, and a special type of hydrogen that they didn't even put a name to, because there was no way to describe it in 1934. But we now know today that the sun is made up out of liquid calcium and metallic hydrogen. The book told us that back in 1934. That was not even an idea, and I know this for a fact. That wasn't even an idea floated in 1934. I mean, as far as scientists were concerned, in 1934, the sun was a giant gas ball, just a ball, fiery ball of gases. I mean, it didn't even enter the human consciousness that it could be calcium or metallic hydrogen. We didn't learn this until you get this, the early 2000s. And that's just because of the SOHO satellites. I mean, we just stared at the sun and analyzed the shit out of it, and this is the answers that we got back. And so it's like, wow, that is not something that they knew. So after that, I just decided that the book, like everything in the book, was true. Because there were a couple of spots that I found that I was like, this doesn't make sense to me. But I've come to realize that the only reason it didn't make sense to me is because of my own ignorance. But now, but there's enough of that book that I just take it as everything in it as absolute truth, because I haven't really come across anything that is blatant. So when I read the story of Christ, Michael, or Jesus, the life and times of Jesus, I take every word that's in there as absolute truth, because everything before in that book is true. So why wouldn't that be?
Right.
So that's how I look at it, is that it's truth from cover to cover. And besides that, if whoever wrote it wanted to make money, they should have just published it as a work of fiction.
Right.
And as far as I'm concerned, if they had published it as a work of fiction, the damn book would still be on the bestsellers list, just like Dune was.
Yeah.
I mean, Dune was on the bestsellers list, right up till the end of the 90s or something crazy?
I don't actually know. I've never really, I think we had a copy, but I never read it.
Yeah. But yeah, it was on the bestsellers list for like decades.
Yeah, it was popular.
Yeah, and I read it, and and it was already a 40-year-old piece of literature when I came across it. And I was introduced to it by a friend in high school who just handed me the book and says, "You gotta read this." And I did, and it was super interesting. And yeah, and so that's how I look at it. I mean, who writes 2,000 pages? And by the way, this is 2,000 pages of small print.
Yes.
And like tiny print, like magnifying types. Like you're not reading this, you're reading this with lots of light.
How many words would it be? It would be a couple 100,000 words or something?
Oh, easily. I mean, if they took and they boosted the font up to like maybe a 12 instead of, what would you guess that to be? Like
I suppose an 8.
Yeah, an 8.
Something.
And they boosted it up to a 12, the book would be triple in size.
Yeah.
Easily. I mean, you would have to break it up.
And that would be without making the pages without making the pages thick enough to not be see-through.
Yeah. I mean, and the pages are thin.
Yes.
Like, I mean, onion skin paper. And so you've got all of that going on. It's just like, who does that? I mean, yeah, I wouldn't even be able to count how many words are in that document. There's a lot. I mean, you say a couple of 100,000, I would say probably, close to 1 million words. And that is a lot of investment to put into a book, and to find out that the book was written in, it took less than 3 years to write the book.
Oh.
That's the rumor. It took less than 3 years to write it.
Because it starts, the first 3 sections tell when they were written. The first 2 were 1934, the third was 1935, I think. The fourth, it doesn't say a year specifically, but the book was published, I think, first in 1950 or 55.
Yeah. So yeah, it took 3 years to write this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, it's like, for a book with that much detail, I'll tell you right now, when Frank Herbert wrote Dune, the amount of notes that he took just to write that one novel filled a vault that his son didn't get the key to, you'll love this, until almost 20 years after his father's death. And then a lawyer came to his house and dropped off a key to this vault. And, you know, the son's like, well, what's this? He's like, this was something that your father wanted you to have this amount of time after his death. So Brian Herbert, he went and he opened this vault. Every scrap of paper that his father wrote down on, every draft piece of literature that his father wrote. In fact, his father wrote whole novels just for character development. In fact, there was so much information in this vault that Brian inherited that he ended up teaming up with another author, and him and this author have already written over a dozen books based on his father's notes. I mean, that is an amazing amount of resources to get from. Like entire backstories for characters, entire backstories. I mean, yeah. Well, I mean, you're writing a book yourself,
Yeah.
and you know that you already know that in order to write a character that is believable, you've got to write their whole story out.
You have to know their whole story.
Yeah, you got to know, like, which planet were they born on? What experience did they have? What got them here? Frank Herbert had all of that written out. And when Brian Herbert discovered it, it was just already done. In fact, he ended up publishing his father's original Dune novel. Already written, already edited. It just had to be dropped off to the publisher. And he had that published. I bought a copy and read it. It's a different type of story. Let's put it this way. You read Dune, it's a complicated piece of literature. When you read the original novel that his father wrote, never published, it's more on a level of a novice writer. The characters are not well developed. The story is more, I don't know, more like B-movie sci-fi than anything. And basically that's the impression you get when you read this book. It's more like a B movie. And yeah.
So there's one final thing. We're kind of getting toward the end of our time. I wanted to wrap up with this. In Oklahoma, I have a neighbor who started a group about discussing, I think, the biblical history, and finding the truth of biblical history. And the last place I thought anybody would have even heard about the Urantia book, or let alone be positively interested, was in this group. Mm-hmm. One of the guys, or actually three of them, I think they're interested in reading the book, and I think this guy knows more about the book than I do, but he hasn't actually read it because he's a Christian. And he's kind of afraid of being possessed by the devil if he looks at it or something. But so I went to one of these things and they mentioned this, and after they had done their discussion, I told them that I was reading the thing, and they had a bunch of questions to ask me about it, and I answered them to the best of my ability, and it was favorably received. They have no problem with the book itself. They're just working themselves in the direction to be able to receive it, I guess. And I thought that was kind of interesting that these guys, because they are from, I think, a variety of Christian backgrounds, have many criticisms of Christianity today and the things attached to it. Mm-hmm. So they're forming this. The impression I got was like, Jesus and the apostles. They were getting together to discuss. What is God? What do we do in relation? All that stuff. What is the basis of this thing?
Yeah.
This thing that's great.
I truly believe. Well, what I would love to see is I'd love to see the Urantia Foundation just publish the life story of the life and times of Jesus Christ as a standalone novel, as a standalone book. I would love for them to do that because I think that people could benefit from just reading that story, and as opposed to and because I think that the other three books, the other three books, I think that they could lead a person into a lot of confusion, and I would prefer them to read the life and teachings of Jesus Christ, so that they get a foundation of what Jesus was actually trying to teach us, and then go read the more complicated stuff and not get confused. And even if they do get confused, it wouldn't matter because they've already got the foundation of what Jesus taught us. So no matter how lost they get in the other stuff, it's like they can always go back to their foundation and be like, no, this is what the Son of Man taught us. Like, because, I mean, well, the first three books are like very interesting. They don't carry the amount of spiritual currency as the life teachings of Jesus Christ. I think that that is where it's at. If like you want to reinforce your faith, and you want to do it, from a more logical and reasoned out perspective, instead of just blindly, falling into whatever people tell you. I think that the life teachings of Jesus Christ is good for people like that.
Right.
Because I think that the Bible is just way too confusing for people. Because, well, I mean, it's like I put it this way. The book was written in such a way as to satiate the profane, but confound the wise. That's exactly what it does. It gives you enough spirituality that you are satisfied with yourself, but it doesn't make you wise enough to avoid being tricked.
It's kind of in its current form. It's if you want to know how to be a half decent person, it's probably a good guide if you have a bit of discernment about what's good to do and what's not. But if you want higher knowledge, it isn't really there. Not all by itself. You'd have to read it and have to read other spiritual books by
Yes, you do.
Ram Dass and other mystics and so on, and they would have to resonate with you.
Yeah, and the thing is that what I found reading the book is that everything that I had studied in archaeology was confirmed in that book. All my ideas that, like I had already figured out years ago that the people with the elongated skulls that used to exist on this planet before 2,000 years, the last one died a little over 2,000 years ago, which is kind of funny. I think that they had to be off the planet before the Son of Man could come. Actually, I think a lot of things had to happen. And I already figured out that they were the Adamites.
Okay.
I figured that out like years and years ago, that who they were. When I read the Urantia book, it confirmed what I had already known, that these were the Adamites. How did it confirm? Basically, the book tells you where they settled, where they moved to, and the track that they took going east. They went east to get to America, to America. And when you follow the elongated skulls, people with the elongated skulls, guess what? They went east to get to America because they landed on the western shores of America. and they made their way across the continent. They didn't make it all the way, but they made it, you know, and they mainly settled in South America. They didn't quite make it to North America, so they mainly settled South America, Central America, and the southern parts. But that's just because they were not fond of the cold. They preferred warmer climates, so they ended up staying in that warm climate belt. And the evidence is there. It's even in California. There's a archaeological site in California. You and I aren't allowed to go there. And the shit that they're pulling out of the ground in this place, you know, they don't want anybody talking about it. No, it's illegal for you to even talk about it. Like I can't even tell you what's been brought out of the ground there. I mean, you know, I'd fucking go to jail for like fucking 20 years. Fuck that shit. It's like, you know, just like you go up north into Nineveh. It's like there's shit up there that I can't talk to you about. Or else it'll be a breach of contract, and fucking I just don't feel like fucking going down that road. So it's like, but there is stuff that has been found, and you can't talk about it. You're not allowed to know about it. Just knowing about it would get you killed. I mean, you know, me and a buddy, we had a conversation about it, but the only reason we could talk about it is because we were both there. He was in the military. I was a civilian, and I'll tell you, when we wanted to talk about it, the phone stayed in the truck, and we went for a nice little walk in the woods, and you know, we just sat under a tree and we talked about our experiences. He was struggling spiritually, so that's, you know, and so because of a lot of what he had seen. And, you know, and he'd seen a lot of nasty shit. And so in order to talk to me about it, that's what we had to do. And we talked for hours and then came back to the truck and put the batteries back in our phones. Can't take batteries out of phones now, though. Back then you could. But yeah, so, you know, last time I heard from him, he was working on a cargo ship, you know, as basically security. Pirates attack. He was one of the guys that went up on the rail with his gun and started, you know, popping people off. And that was his job. Yeah, a lot of times, like, they don't just spray water at these pirates. No, they do the water spray to keep them from getting close, but if they want to really get on board, it was his job to just start putting bullets in people's heads. And, you know, that's, you know, and you do, he said most of the time, he's like, you know, you pop off 3 of them. He said they turn around and head back. He's like, you know, but he says it's the only thing you can do. You try to deter them with high pressure water, but he said these guys just don't give up. And if they ever got on board, he said they'll just kill everybody. So what are you supposed to do, right? You know. They're not nice people.
All right, so I think it's about time to wrap it up, you think? So
yes. I'll leave you guys with this. We make God in our own image because our ego tells us so. Keep that in mind at all times.
all right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.